All right, so are you ready to really dive into this whole learning English thing?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
We're talking learning it fast, right?
hmm
Because who has time to wait years and years to be fluent?
Yeah, nobody's got time for that.
So for this deep dive, we've got this super cool article. It's by the Language Learning Pros over at EF.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah, and they've got some really unique tips. It's not like your typical textbook stuff, you know?
Right. It's like thinking outside the box a little bit when it comes to actually learning the language.
Exactly. And one of the first things that jumped out at me was how much they emphasize just making English a normal part of your life.
Yeah, weave it in. Don't just make it like a subject you study.
Totally. And they
Yeah.
kick things off by talking about reading, which I feel like we all know is important.
Right.
But they take it a step further.
Yeah.
It's not just about reading books and articles. They're talking about reading anything and everything in English.
Like cereal boxes. They
Mm.
mentioned cereal boxes and product labels.
Okay, wait. Reading a cereal box to learn English? It sounds a little passive. How do we make sure we're actually absorbing and learning from that?
Right. So it's all about being strategic about it. So
Yeah.
instead of just skimming it, pick out one word or one phrase, look it up, and then try to use it in a sentence.
Oh, so it's like you're turning those random moments into mini vocabulary lessons.
Yeah, exactly. Little bite-sized learning.
I like that. So even if I'm just grabbing a snack, I can make it a little English practice session.
Okay.
Okay, I'm a little less enthused about their next tip,
What's that?
note-taking. I mean, it's important, but it can feel so old school.
I get it, but honestly, active note-taking is one of the best ways to fight that thing where you think you remember something, but you actually don't.
Oh, yeah. Like the illusion of remembering.
Yes, exactly. That
Yeah.
taking notes forces you to actually engage with the material. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I always struggle with making note-taking efficient. Do you have any tips, specific methods or tools that work well for language learning?
Okay, so one of my favorite methods is using flashcards with spaced repetition. You can do it digitally or old school with index cards.
Spaced repetition I've heard of. That I might have to give that a try. What I usually do is I use a note-taking app, like Evernote. I can organize everything by topic. I can even add audio recordings if I'm listening to a podcast.
Oh, that's smart.
Speaking of podcasts, that's actually their next tip. And I'm pretty excited about this one.
Me too. Podcasts and YouTube are like gold mines for this.
It's true.
Especially if you pick stuff that you're actually interested in.
Right.
You'll pick up on pronunciation slang, even cultural stuff, without realizing you're studying.
It's like stealth learning. I love finding podcasts that are both entertaining and educational. I actually learned a ton of idioms just by listening to comedy podcasts.
See? That's a great example.
Okay, so we've got podcasts, we've got reading cereal boxes, note-taking. These are great. But let's be real, nothing beats full immersion, right?
Right. Ideally. Yeah. Living abroad is fantastic.
Oh, for sure.
But it's not always possible.
That's true.
So they offer some really cool ways to create that immersive environment without actually traveling.
Now, that's something I think a lot of our listeners can get behind. So
Yeah.
how do we bring that immersion home, so to speak?
Well, they suggest tapping into your social media.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of just scrolling past posts in English, make an effort to actually read them.
Engage with them.
Yeah, comment, ask questions.
Yeah.
Really try to use that new vocabulary.
They call this incidental learning, right? It's that idea of picking up bits and pieces of the language throughout your day without necessarily sitting down to study.
Exactly. That's like how we learned our first language, through constant exposure.
Makes sense. I'm all about maximizing those little learning opportunities. Now, this next tip is something I do instinctively, maybe a little too much. Asking questions.
That's great, though.
You really think so?
The article really emphasizes how important curiosity is. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification, even if it feels like a silly question.
But what if you're not in a classroom setting? Where do you go to get those questions answered?
That's where the internet comes in. There are so many online resources, forums, Q&A websites, even social media groups.
Oh, that's true. You can even find language partners online.
Exactly. They can answer questions, give you feedback.
That's really helpful, especially for people who are learning independently. Okay, now this next tip is a bit more fun and maybe a tad stalkerish.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
They suggest learning from the stars.
Oh, I like this one.
So we're talking about watching interviews with your favorite English-speaking actors, singers, YouTubers.
It's a fantastic way to pick up on natural conversational language.
It's like a free masterclass in slang, idioms, and humor. Plus, it's way more entertaining than staring at a textbook.
And you can tailor it to your interests, whether you're into music, movies, video games, whatever.
Speaking of tailoring things to your interests, their next tip is all about needs-based learning. They're basically saying, figure out why you want to learn English and then focus on the vocab that's relevant to you.
This is where it gets strategic. So are you learning for travel work, personal reasons? Once you know your why, you can prioritize what you need to learn.
So if I'm learning English to travel, I should focus on phrases for booking flights, asking for directions, ordering food.
Exactly. Or if you need it for work, you might focus on business vocab, email, etiquette, presentation skills.
It's all about working smarter, not harder. Now, I think their final tip is probably the most important one, and it's something we all need to hear sometimes. Be kind to yourself.
Oh, this is so important. Language learning is a journey. There will be bumps. It's okay.
I have a story that perfectly illustrates this, so picture this. There I am in a charming little Parisian cafe, feeling all confident with my newly acquired French vocabulary.
Ooh la la. It sounds promising.
I decided to go for the classic, a croissant. How hard could it be to order a croissant, right?
It seems straightforward enough.
Well, apparently my pronunciation was a bit off. Instead of a flaky, buttery croissant, I ended up with a plate of escargot.
Oh no.
You know,
Not quite the breakfast you were hoping for.
to say I was mortified is an understatement. But looking back, it's a pretty funny story. It was a good reminder that mistakes are inevitable, and sometimes they lead to unexpected culinary adventures.
Absolutely. It's all part of the learning process.
Yeah.
And honestly, who hasn't had a language blender or two while traveling? It's practically a rite of passage.
So true. And I think that's where the article's point about positive self-talk comes in. Instead of getting discouraged and thinking I'm terrible at languages, it's much more helpful to reframe it as I'm learning, I'm making progress, and hey, at least I got a funny story out of it.
I love that perspective. It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination. And remember, every mistake is an opportunity to learn and improve.
Right. And it's also important to remember that you're not alone on this journey. There are millions of people around the world learning English, all facing similar challenges and celebrating similar victories.
That's a great point. Connecting with other learners can be so motivating and supportive, whether it's through online forums, language exchange partners, or even just chatting with friends who are also learning English. That sense of community can make a big difference.
It's like having a built-in support system for those moments when you feel like giving up.
Exactly. Because let's be real, there will be times when you hit a wall, when the grammar rules seem impossible, or when you just can't seem to understand native speakers.
Oh, yeah, those moments can be super frustrating. It's like you're making progress and then suddenly you hit a roadblock.
But here's the thing. Those roadblocks are actually opportunities for growth. They force you to step back, reevaluate your approach, and maybe try something new.
So instead of viewing them as setbacks, we should see them as challenges to overcome.
Precisely. It's all about reframing your perspective. And that's what makes language learning so rewarding. It's not just about acquiring a new skill. It's about developing resilience, problem-solving abilities, and a whole new way of looking at the world.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. So to recap what we've learned so far, it's about immersing yourself in English as much as possible, being curious, asking questions, and not being afraid to make mistakes.
And most importantly, finding ways to make the learning process enjoyable. Whether it's through podcasts, movies, music, or even those infamous cereal boxes, there are so many fun and creative ways to learn English.
So true. Now, I know our listeners are probably eager to put all these tips into action. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to start seeing progress right away?
I would say pick one tip from this deep dive that resonates with you the most and commit to incorporating it into your daily routine starting today.
I love that. It's all about taking action and making those small, consistent steps towards fluency. It's not about finding some magic formula or overnight solution. It's about building those language habits and enjoying the journey.
Exactly. And remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. So be patient with yourself, celebrate your successes, and most importantly, have fun.
So well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into learning English quickly. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to take your language skills to the next level.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll be listening to your podcast in perfect English.
We've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive, but there's one thing I want to circle back to before we wrap things up. It's that idea of being kind to yourself throughout the learning process.
It's so easy to get caught up in the I need to be fluent, now will be a mentality, but that can actually hinder your progress.
It's like anything else worth achieving. It takes time, effort, and a whole lot of patience.
And I think it's helpful to remember that everyone learns at their own pace. There's no need to compare yourself to others or put unnecessary pressure on yourself.
Comparison really is the thief of joy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when it comes to language learning, celebrating those small wins along the way can make a huge difference.
Did you have any aha moments or milestones that really kept you motivated when you were learning new languages?
Oh, definitely. I remember the first time I was able to have a simple conversation with a native speaker in Spanish. It wasn't perfect, but it was a huge confidence booster. And it made me realize that all the hard work was paying off.
Those breakthroughs are so rewarding, and I think they help shift your mindset from, I can't do this, to, I'm making progress.
Exactly. And that's when the real magic happens.
Yeah.
When you start to see the possibilities, when you realize that you can actually communicate and connect with people in a whole new language.
And speaking of possibilities, think about all the doors that fluency can open.
It's incredible. You can travel to new places, immerse yourself in different cultures, make new friends from all over the world. The possibilities are endless.
And even if you're not planning to travel, the Globe Fluency can enhance your career prospects, boost your cognitive abilities, and enrich your life in countless ways.
It's like gaining a superpower. And the best part is it's a superpower that anyone can develop with dedication and perseverance.
So if you're listening to this and feeling inspired to embark on your own English learning journey, just remember, you've got this. It might seem daunting at first, but with the right approach and a positive mindset, fluency is within your reach.
Start small, be consistent, and most importantly, have fun. Don't be afraid to experiment with different learning styles and find what works best for you.
That's such great advice. And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way. We've got tons of resources and tips on our website, and we're always happy to answer your questions.
We're a community of language learners, all striving towards the same goal. So let's support each other, celebrate our successes, and keep those learning adventures going.
That's a wrap on this deep dive into learning English quickly. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and are feeling motivated to take your language skills to the next level. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those learning adventures going.